Okay, so quadrantal angles are our angles that are like 0, 90, 180, and 270. We need to talk about how to find the sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, etc. of quadrantal angles as well. But we can't turn them into a triangle because there's no room like to draw a vertical line down, correct? But we still can kind of figure out what x, y, and r are for this so that we can still use the formulas that we've talked about today. So this one, let's imagine that we have just a circle that these points are on, and maybe that point on the circle is just at 1, 0. It's what we call the unit circle, which means the radius is 1 unit long, which is convenient, okay? So this angle has a point right there. If we could, we would draw a vertical line down to the x-axis and create a triangle, but we can't because it's already on the axis. So just go ahead and tell me what x, y, and r are for the angle 0 or 360. What would x be? X is 1. Good. What's y?
0.
Y is 0. What's r?
1.
R is 1. So therefore, what would sine of 0 be? Sine is y over r, which would be 0 over 1, which is 0. What would cosine of 0 be? What's cosine? Hello? X over r, which is 1 over 1, which is 1, right? So the sine of 0 or 360 is 1, and the cosine of 0 or 360, no, 0, is 1. Sorry. Okay, what about the tangent? What is tangent? So y over x, correct? So what's the y value? 0. What's the x value? 1. So what's tangent of 0? 0. Okay. Earlier today I gave you a little chart that you're going to memorize. Let's look at this chart together. Okay. This means 0 degrees. This column is for you to write the angle that corresponds with 0, but in radians. So if it's 0 degrees, how many radians is that? 0 radians, correct? Okay. What's the sine of 0? We just figured that out. 0. What's the cosine of 0? 1. Good. What's the tangent of 0? No. Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, now I left room for your secant, cosecant, and cotangent, so let's do those really fast. So cosecant would be r over y, or 1 over 0. Does anyone notice a major problem with that? We can't do that. We can't divide by 0. We call that undefined. In other words, cosecant of 0 does not exist. So what we write in our little chart is undefined. I just abbreviate it like that usually. Okay, what about secant? What's secant? R over x, correct? So 1 over 1, which is 1. Okay, so 1 for secant. And then cotangent would be x over y, which would be 1 over 0. Which is undefined. Remember how these are reciprocals of these. If you try and do the reciprocal of 0, A reciprocal means you're flipping the fraction over. That would put a 0 on the bottom, which makes it undefined. If you do the reciprocal of 1, which means you have 1 over 1 and you flip it over, you still have 1. Right? Do you see how these go together? The reciprocal of 0 is undefined, the reciprocal of 1 is 1, the reciprocal of 0 is undefined, and vice versa. Okay. We've only talked about one of the quadrantal angles. I spent a lot of time on it because I want you to use this to adapt the other 3. So let's just quickly talk through them. We won't do them in as much detail. But 90 degrees, imagine on your unit circle that there's a point going through that angle at 0, 1. Okay, so tell me what the x, y, and r values are for that angle. X is 0. Y is 1. R is always 1 because it's a unit circle with a radius of 1 unit. Okay, so now can you use those numbers to find the sine of 90 and the cosine of 90 and the tangent of 90 and the cosecant of 90 and the secant of 90 and the cotangent of 90? Do you need me to do any of them with you, just really fast? Like sine of 90, for example, is y over r, and y is 1 and r is 1, so sine of 90 is 1. I think I already said this, but I'm going to say this again. We're kind of finding things on this chart, but we're memorizing the chart. So it will be to the point where this is like your times table, so hopefully you have that memorized. This will be as memorized as hopefully that is. And you won't ever have to draw these out again because you'll just know them. Okay, let's draw the last 2 just to get you going on them, and then you'll probably end up using them on your assignment today. Okay, so 180 would be that direction. So let's say that points at negative 1, 0. So what's x? Negative 1. Leave it negative. So that means when you're putting that into your problem, anything that has x in it, the answer will be negative. Okay, and then y will be what? 0, and r is always 1. R is always a distance. It's always a positive number. R is always the radius, the distance from the center to the circle, always positive. Okay? All right, so now you've got those numbers. You can do the same thing with 180. And then the last one would be 270. So imagine that on the unit circle down here at 0, negative 1, which means your x value is 0, your y value is negative 1, and your r value is 1. And you find those angles exactly that same way. Okay, we have only gotten through a piece of what we need to know today. Like I said, I thought this would probably take us 2 days. What we didn't get to was reviewing those special right triangles. So here's what's going to happen when you try and do the 1-4 assignment. You're not going to be able to do the whole thing. You're only going to be able to do the problems involving the quadrantal angles and involving the type of problem we did earlier where it's just like the terminal side going through a point. And so you're just doing your values that way. We haven't done any of the special angles that we need to learn about.